Hi, this is Julia Urbishova, and welcome to the podcast At Home in the States. Thank you for listening and supporting me. I spent a long time thinking about who would be the ideal first guest for an American audience, someone who could also talk about the Czech Republic. And it didn't really take long before I thought of my guest, which is Matěj Číp. And so here he is. And welcome, Matěj. Greetings to New York.
Thank you so much, and welcome to everybody who's listening to this lovely podcast. I'm happy to join this premiere in English.
Yes, I'm excited.
Great.
And please
So am I.
forgive us our English because I'm sure, our accent is it still has a bit of Czech language in it, but we are proud of it, right?
We are, and that's the point. Why should we lose our accent since it's so specific for us, right?
That is true. And it's always the conversation starter. I don't know about you, but definitely for me.
Absolutely, it is. Many times when I think, oh, I don't have any accent, and the people are like, oh, where are you from?
Yes, and that's the question actually I keep hearing from like other people sometimes say like how rude it is actually in US to ask where you're from. But I always say I don't take it as a rude question at all. I love it. What
Mm,
about you?
absolutely. I'm always happy to share my roots, my origins. I'm proudly sharing it now.
Yes, so I'm happy to have you, and we will actually share that with my audience. We met, I don't know if you remember it, but we met at the opening of the Moravian Beauty exhibit in Czech Center in New York, which is more than a year ago, where you were playing lovely Moravian folk songs, just very softly as a background music. And I think many of us that evening felt really homesick that evening, thanks to you. Do you often get reactions like that?
Oof. I mean, this is a good point. Music should be causing emotions. And if some of the audience are leaving after the experience with full of emotions, being in whatever emotion, I think that's a good sign. But I'm not sure if my goal is always to leave them with some sad or homesick emotions, but I'm happy it left some impact on you. But I'm always trying to strike more for the positive and hopeful outcome of my music.
Oh, it was very positive because it
Okay.
reminded us again, like where we are coming from and how
Mm.
beautiful the Moravian music is. Maybe let's just explain to those who don't know what Moravian means. Basically, Czech Republic is divided into three
Mhm.
historical sites. Bohemia, which is the main part of the country where the capital city Prague is. Then there is Moravia, and then there is Silesia, which is more towards east, towards Slovakian borders.
Mhm.
Matěj, we actually have quite a similar story, or at
Mhm.
least a part of it.
Okay.
Even though I'm not a professional musician like you, and we haven't mentioned it yet that you are a musician, but we are getting there.
Mhm.
We both come from a similar rural environment. We both are from villages. My grandma
Mhm.
is actually from area where you were born at,
Oh,
and
nice.
we both have very loving parents without whom we wouldn't be where we are today. And we both worked hard to pursue our American dreams. Before we dive into your full story, let me introduce you. So, here in America, you are known as the cimbalom guy.
That's correct.
And I can hear the listeners now saying like the what? So please just tell me what it is.
Great question. The cimbalom, cimbalom, the instrument that is quite typical for my home, but also for the Central Europe. A very unique instrument that became my lifelong tool for getting all the opportunities. An instrument that allowed me to chase my dreams, to become of who I am into a vast extent. And the instrument that is rooted in Hungary. Many people would connect it only with the folk music, but this instrument, not many people know, has been constructed for the purposes of classical stages. And maybe some of the listeners have heard about the dulcimer before. So dulcimer is the instrumental family where the cimbalom belongs, but the cimbalom is actually the concert classical version of what the dulcimer would be here in the American environment, for example.
I did not know that. Okay,
Mm.
so is the tradition of that instrument known within American context and American classical music, if we can say a term like that?
If we would be speaking about dulcimer, then we can say that in Appalachia, in the Appalachian Mountains, they have the traditional dulcimers, and we can make the extension right from the beginning, so it's a little bit more clear for the listeners. If we speak about dulcimer, it's an instrument of a trapezoidal shape that has strings attached on a soundboard, and usually use little mallets, strings beaters to hit the strings to produce the sound. The cimbalom is much more bigger, much more robust, much more classically made instrument, much more classically made version of the dulcimer that is also pedal, that is fully chromatic. That means that you can play much more music on that instrument as opposed to the dulcimer that is much more limited in the range and their capabilities. The dulcimer would be definitely much more connected mostly to the folk side of music, but for the cimbalom itself, it could be both. It could be the folk music, but it could be also the classical music or any other genre as you can experiment as well.
Well, it's really interesting what you say, because when you said at the beginning of the sentence, it is actually made for classical music. Like I was in my mind saying, how is that? Because how I know the instrument from Czech Republic, it's always connected with the folk music, right? Do you actually know how it came from, let's say, Hungary to our region, to Moravia?
I should know. I don't know into super details because unfortunately we don't have lots of resources that have been collected about our instrument, but we know the basics. We know how our instrument came about. And so the cimbalom, actually, we are very grateful to a Czech luthier, Josef Václav Šunda, who once emigrated to Hungary into a workshop where they were making instruments. And he was aware of the dulcimer that was existing, the small cimbalom at the time that was portable, that you could use usually in folk music settings. And because it was the time of classical music, it was the late 19th century, and he was also a friend of Ferenc Liszt, an important Romantic period composer, he thought, okay, I can bring this dulcimer, this small cimbalom, and I can make it into a classical instrument. So he put it on the legs, he attached pedal to it, he extended the range, he changed the construction of it so the cimbalom can sound much more like maybe of a piano, and that's how the concert cimbalom has been developed. But later on, because the cimbalom is very practical when it comes to the band settings. If you play the cimbalom, you can play solos, you can accompany the band, you can keep the rhythmic sessions going, you can be the very important motor of the whole band. So this instrument is very practical if you have the whole ensemble. That is very typical for our country, the folk music ensemble, as well as in Hungary, Slovakia, or other Eastern European countries. So yeah, cimbalom has been adapted into folk music, but originally it was meant for the concert, for the classical stages.
And of course, I will try to find some good music with your help that we can actually show to our listeners so they can imagine like what sound does the instrument give. I would, since I'm in New Orleans, as you know, I would compare the cimbalom a little like something like trumpet in New Orleans, let's say. You know, it's almost impossible to imagine a brass band or a jazz ensemble without it. So my next question, how does a boy from a small village whose family is not musical, because I know that about your family, how do you come to play the cimbalom?
I would say my family is not musical, but has a good appreciation of music, especially my dad. He also grew up in an environment where music was a common feature of their gatherings, you know, singing songs, playing guitar, and enjoying the family environment.
Because
And
I'm
then,
sorry to interrupt you, but like there is a saying in Czech Republic that like every Czech is a musician, basically. That it's something
yes.
very common what we do in our free time.
Absolutely, and there's absolutely something into it, and also our educational system helps to that, and we can talk about it later, of course.
Yes.
And then at one point, my grandmother, who unfortunately now passed away, but she's been celebrating the 70th birthday, and my family, for some reason, decided like, okay, we can invite the traditional cimbalom folk band to it. And at the time, I was 7 years old, and it was my first encounter of that instrument. And I was stuck. I heard that instrument for the first time, and my mind just blew up. I fell in love immediately. It was literally the love of the first sight. When I saw that instrument, when I heard it, when I saw the cimbalom player, how he used the beaters, the mallets, how he hit the strings, it was so appealing to me that I couldn't even move from that instrument. At the time, the instrumentalist, which is my good friend right now, he didn't even let me try that instrument because he was afraid that I would break his mallets. So I wasn't able to try it at that moment, but I was still talking about it, and I somehow begged my parents, would there be any chance that I could start learning that instrument? And we were lucky that we lived in this village that was close to two important towns that cimbalom would be a part of the elementary art schools that we have in the Czech Republic. And that's where I started, first in Nový Jičín, which is on the east side of my home, 10 minutes away. And then I switched for my second year to Valašské Meziříčí, which is the opposite 10 minutes drive from our home, where I attended class of one of the best professors when it comes to cimbalom education for kids. And that's where it all started. And I honed my passion and continued from then ever since.
What I really like about you and about the story and your journey toward the American dream is a combination that of like, you know, character signs that I really personally know very well too. And I don't want to, you know, sound like I'm bragging or something, but it really reminds me the determination, the focus, you know, the little stubbornness I can see there. But also there's a lot of like modesty and hard work. For the
Thank you.
context, and I think my American listeners will understand this, when a Czech kid decides that they want to go study at American university, it's not simple thing. It's nothing very easy, right? One semester of study can cost as much as an adult's annual salary.
Easily.
I would say that's right. So first, tell me, how did you break the news to your parents, and what did they say? Like, I mean, the news about that Matěj came up with the idea of studying in US.
I think it was quite gradual because then I was finishing the conservatory, which is also a high school in the Czech Republic. In the US, conservatories are usually the university levels, but in Czech, we can already study at a conservatory during our high school. And that's normally for 6 years. So during those last 2 years of the conservatory, where we had much more time of just focusing only on that instrument because we already fulfilled all the general education classes, then I had so much time to think about what should I do next. And then I gradually somehow started mentioning to my parents that, oh, I think I would love to bring my instrument and go study in America, to find a way to bring this instrument and really develop a new path, not only for myself, but maybe for the instrument. I was very naive, you know, I didn't know anything at the time. But this dream or this idea was so strong that I couldn't get it out of my mind. So when I first told my parents and I told them everything about the American education system that I was able to read from the internet, they say like, oh, this is not possible. We don't have money for it. We cannot afford it, because I'm from a very rural family that my parents right now are both retired. That means they have a very basic salary that cannot make enough money for them to give me support my studies, to even buy air tickets, nothing. So it was very difficult for them to accept it because they knew the financial problem would be very severe. But I never did let it destroy this dream, because I was like, okay, if I want it, I know that you guys cannot help me with it in any way because it's such a big generational gap. My parents cannot even speak English because they grew up in a completely different environment where they were learning Russian. So I knew that everything I will do towards this dream, it's going to be on my own. And that was something that also was very appealing to me, because I knew it's going to be mine, and that was driving me forward.
Something like, if I can make this, I can make anything.
Something like that, yeah. And then,
And
you
you
know,
did.
once you meet like one small success, it motivates you even more. And then, oh, there's maybe a way, and then I can do this, and I can try this and that. And then you try to put this big puzzle together piece by piece.
Yeah, because one decision opens another door, right? And then
Yeah, yeah.
another door.
Of
That's
course, in a way, you have to be somehow lucky, because many times on that journey, I was super lucky to meet the right people. But I also believe you have to be open to be lucky. You need to look around with open eyes and kind of absorb the ideas that people are telling you. Hey, maybe try calling this person. He's been to America. He knows this. He knows that. Just try. So you need to kind of be open to absorb and get ideas to progress forward, to find the ideal path. Even though right now I would say that getting to America from our country, or getting to study abroad in general, especially to the US, where it's not supported by the governmental programs, it's much easier than before, because we have the internet. Now there's some resources that we can reach out to, and they can give you more information. So I don't think the barrier is that big, but it is big because normal schools don't mention this option, and because everyone knows that it's very expensive to study abroad. Back home, the schools are usually funded by government, so many kids don't even think about this possibility as a viable choice.
I agree. I am much older than you, and I was with the generation where I think was even more difficult. Like, you
Hmm.
know, it was very common among my classmates that people were going to different European countries within the
Hmm.
program called Erasmus. I'm sure you
Yes.
know that too. And so for me, when I start thinking about the option of going to US, I remember that I had to dig in the internet and, like really, really, really look for any
Mhm.
of those programs. And we just recently talked about it at home, like how did I get there? And it was, again, as you say, it's a bit luck,
Mhm.
but it's also that determination and that you are already prepared. Because when I applied for my American studying at New Orleans, at University of New Orleans, I had to already had my English official English
Mhm.
exam passed, right?
Mhm.
And I was just ready. I had my paper already ready because the previous semester I felt like my school didn't have, it wasn't so difficult. So I was like, oh, let me just, get extra private school in for
Mhm.
English, and
Mhm.
I did this like first certificate in English just because I had time for it. And if
Mhm.
I didn't have that exam, I wouldn't be even able to apply, right? So
Yes. It's a long-term process. Like, even though if you come up with an idea, you cannot make it overnight, because you need to fulfill the exams, you need to write essays, you need to be admitted. And as you're coming from a country which has almost zero resources on how to get there, it takes much longer. Took me almost 2 years to get ready. When I first started with ideas, started researching about what is needed, then I found out about the ACT or SATs exams, that those that I've never heard of. And then I remember I brought the book of the ACT preparation. It was this thick book of all English terms about science, math, English, with all the terms that I have never heard in my life, because I came through like classical English education, which was not ready for this kind of questions and thinking. And I was like, oh, this is not possible. I was trying to get over it, try, practice, practice, practice. And I was trying to ask more people. And somehow I was able to get at least the minimum required score so I can get into the university where I started with my instrument.
that's still very impressive because I remember my first days at university here where I was just reading those articles needed
Mm,
for my classes, and I was like, what am I doing here? Like there's no way I will ever understand
no,
what is
absolutely, yeah.
written here.
It was
Yes.
super challenging for me. It took me half a year at least to really get used to it. And it was like waves going up and down. Sometimes I felt like, oh, now it's going well. And then I met my friends and I was able to express myself. And I remember this was like a thing that always like gave me lots of thinking, that I wasn't sure if I'm able to be who I am as I was used to in Czech Republic in my native language in English. So whenever I was hanging out with my friends, like, is this really me? Like, am I able to say these kind of jokes and express all these things that I would normally be able to? So it definitely took some time, even though I was trying to be prepared as much as possible beforehand. But then the shock, the experience, jumping in that water without being able to swim was absolutely an experience.
I love that you say it because I was just speaking about something similar at my previous podcast, which is in Czech though,
Mhm.
and it was with a lady who lives in Germany and who is a specialist in like languages. She,
Okay.
she studied that professionally, and we talked about it how basically when you move to a new country and when you learn a new language, you become a different person. So you have this personality connected with the Czech
Mhm.
language and your
Mhm.
culture, and then there is this new personality of Matěj living
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
US and doing different jokes, exactly, and like talking differently. So
Yeah, like the
yeah, just to
personality
prove that it's true.
2.0 updated a little bit.
Yes, yes.
But it's fun that you say that, because I believe the fact that you also learn a different language also helps you appreciate your native language a little bit more. At least it was my case when I was learning English. Wow, I realized some terms in Czech finally means this, because I was trying to go deeper about it. But at home I would just accept it because I would be able to understand everything. But here I had to look it up and look the origin of the words, and it even helped me with my own native language, which I'm grateful for.
Absolutely. I can relate to that too.
Mhm.
Well, then you flew to South Dakota. Let's like, shorten the story. Of course, like it
Yeah.
was long process of like
Yeah.
getting finances and getting there. You decided to study music there and you wanted to actually study the cimbalom, but that did not happen, right?
Yes and no. Like, we can say it in both ways. So first, imagine you're bringing an instrument that is almost unknown in the America, and you're trying to find a school that would be so flexible to give you some opportunity so you can be involved with the program, with the instrument. And I was naive. I was like, crafting an introduction email, and I sent it to all the prestigious music school in America, trying to find a way that I could be there accepted with a cimbalom. And to my surprise, many of them replied, but they said, unfortunately, we cannot accept you with the cimbalom because there's no cimbalom instructor. No one can teach you. What can we do with you? Like, you can be here studying piano, violin, any other classical instrument, but not a cimbalom. But I was still trying to not to give up. So then I got this connection in South Dakota for one professor, amazing human being, Marcela Faflak, who's been teaching in South Dakota for the past 25 years. And she's a piano professor. And I sent the same email to her. And when I got the connection, I sent the email to her. And she said, Matěj, come here. We can make it for you. We can make you involved in our music program with the cimbalom, and we'll try to be as flexible as possible. So I packed everything. I packed my cimbalom that was freshly made just 2 weeks before I flew. I had to figure out how to ship the cimbalom on the airplane all the way to America. So many things to figure out on the way, find the finances and everything. But after a while, I was able to do that, moved to South Dakota, where I started the journey, and I officially began the first cimbalom student at a university level in the United States. But it wasn't in the case that I would have a cimbalom professor. I was just having the flexibility of everything that I was doing in the music program, being part of ensembles, orchestras, percussion ensembles, even marching bands. I could experiment using the cimbalom, which was such a cool thing, because back home I would not be able to do that, because cimbalom would be much more limited because it's already known into some certain path. But over there I could do everything. Even every basic homework that I had was connected with music. I used the cimbalom. I recorded myself of, understanding the homework this way, because this was my tool to keep moving forward. And I would say it worked out.
Well, by the way, how much does a cimbalom weigh?
A cimbalom is about 200 pounds, so it's nothing easy, and it's very big as well. You can remove the legs and put it in a case, but even that whole thing, when we were moving it over the ocean, we need to put it in a special road case that was custom made just for the cimbalom. This is like a huge, almost like a trunk of a pickup truck, basically. You have to load it on a pallet. The pallet, you have to secure it as much as possible with all the materials that you can find, and then this whole pallet is being loaded into a cargo airplane, and it flew to Minneapolis, where I picked it up and drove it to South Dakota. So it wasn't an
And
easy
not
task.
just moving over the ocean, but like I remember from that New York concert that
Oh yeah.
you were saying something that you were almost late because you were not able to find somebody to, because you always need two people, right? Like, tell me, like seriously, tell me how you move around New York City
So
with a cimbalom for concert.
this is my like a private test if my friends are good friends, because if I ask them, hey, can you help me with a cimbalom, then I know if they're good friends. If they say, yeah, I'm willing to do that, maybe they don't know, and they're like, oh, for sure, and then they come and like, what is this, what did I sign up for? But now I found a way how to do it on my own. But ideally, if you have two people, it's the best, because you need two sides, to have the balance of the weight, because 200 pounds is not easy to carry on your own. But you have the special case that has two handles on each side, so you can grab the handles and you can move it into the car, usually flat in the back. So if you have big enough car, which America doesn't have a problem with, then you can load it in the back and drive it. Lately, I've been doing lots of Uber. So I found out if I call Uber XL,
You need
usually
the
in
Excel.
99 cases, I can fit a cimbalom in the back. So if anyone wants me to play somewhere, I say, okay, yeah, but one condition, I need to get Uber XL to get from my apartment to the location.
That is funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, thank you for big American cars, right?
So thanks for that. Yeah.
Look, people always ask me here how life in Europe is, and
Mhm.
how studying in Europe is. They really want to know that because they don't have the experience, right? If you go just as a tourist, you cannot really see the real life. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna ask you now to change it, to flip it.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
how was the first experience in America for you? So maybe it can be a great feedback for our American friends too.
Mhm.
What is such a big difference between those two cultures?
Mhm. One of the biggest differences was the way the classes were being conducted when it comes to focus on discussions. I remember still I came to one of my first classes, and everyone was always like raising hands up and asking some questions and discussing the points. Sometimes even too much, like they were saying something just to say something. I was really not used to, because back home, if you study, like, oh, just be quiet and wait for the right time to ask something, and usually people don't ask because the professor is a big authority. And back home, there's still, unfortunately, sometimes the notion that we don't want to question the authorities. But here in the States, ever since I came, I had a feeling that I can question the authorities, because it's a good sign that I'm trying to think about the material that I was studying and I was trying to really internalize for myself. So the discussion based, the critical based environment was something of a big difference that I was not used to. Maybe in Western Europe it would be different, but for Czech Republic specifically, it was a big difference. Then, of course, the fact that you need to write a check for the tuition for each semester, it was a super huge difference I was not used to, because back home, funded by government, I didn't have to worry about paying for school. Even the dormitories or the fees for food in Czech, usually the things for students are much more discounted. But here, I almost had a feeling that, oh, it's for students. Oh, we can make money on the students, so let's charge them even more. So
because we know that the parents gonna pay anyway, because like they want them
exactly,
to have a good
exactly.
future.
So now, like, the food in a school cafeteria was $13-14 easily. I was like, wow, I was not used to it. I was used to paying $2 for the discounted student price for my meals, and I was so different. So that was maybe the negative difference. But of course, because you had to spend much more resources on your education, I think it also forced you to be more determined, especially if you were someone who, worked hard to get the resources for the school. Then I was like, okay, I don't have any excuse. I want to go all in. I want to take the best advantage of all the resources here, because it was so hard for me. So that also is concluding to another fact, that because of the financial resources that all the universities are possessing here, they are able to provide the students with a really cool environment, with new technologies, with new resources in all the different fields and areas. And I was also not used to it. Like, I went to our school gym in South Dakota, even though it's South Dakota, but it was state-of-the-art gym. The concert halls, all equipped with new technology, big concert halls that can fit so many people, amazing concert pianos that back home, if we had this piano, I could not even touch it because I was not a pianist.
Exactly.
And over there, people just like almost put their drinks on top of that. Like, wow, this is really big difference. So the resourcefulness, of course, was another big change
I
from
love
what I
it.
was
I
used
love
to.
how you talk about it. That is so true. Everything is so true. And let me just add to it my impressions when I came to study here. It was very similar.
Hmm.
And I came to a basic state school, which
Hmm.
I expect you probably too, or
Yes,
where you.
also a
Yeah.
state school. Hmm.
Okay, so those schools, like in general in America, are considered as like, not so good schools, right? When
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
once mentioned it to one of Czech descent professor who was giving some lectures at Charles University in Prague, and I was telling him, "Look, I'm planning to go to, UNO in New Orleans," and I was so excited. And he was like, Why would you even bother? Why don't you
Hmm.
like email me and let's find you some like good university?"
Hmm.
And again, like I didn't have the financial resources. I was very happy for this exchange program that I can go basically study to US for free,
Hmm.
because the school paid almost everything, and then I
Hmm.
asked for like extra scholarships, so it really got paid by my school.
Hmm.
But what I'm trying to say is, like, even though it was just a basic state school, I came here and I was so impressed. Everything was amazing. As you
Absolutely.
say,
Uh-huh.
the library, I came to the library, which had like 4 floors of library, all the
Oh
books that
yeah,
we only studied about, that they actually exist. All
exactly.
those books were there.
Yeah, and maybe I'm not sure if it was your case, but we had like also internet library, and so if there was some article or some book that wasn't available in our library, we could ask for it, and the library ordered it from us, so they could get it from Europe, Germany, from anywhere. It was like,
Oh my
wow,
goodness.
amazing.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And also like the production, as you are a
Hmm.
musician, I'm a writer, I'm different story, but I was always very interested in culture. So I was going actually to all the concerts and,
Hmm.
all the liberal arts students' performances. And I was always very amazed like about the quality of the performances,
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
like, it's like top level already and even now when I live here, it's top level in elementary schools already,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
I don't want to again, like put the European or countries or
Hmm.
Czech Republic down, because that's not what I'm doing. It's just
Hmm.
it's very big, different
Hmm.
different environment, different tradition. They don't have the tradition of musicals, let's say,
Hmm.
right? So the big tradition of producing musicals here on like really like elementary schools level,
Yeah.
then you are not surprised when you go to Broadway and you are like, okay, there was not like one mistake on this, like, you know, like I'm always looking
Flawless.
for those, like, you know, mistake, like, so, you know, I just
Yeah,
love
yeah,
watching how the people work, how orchestra works, and I'm
yeah.
always waiting for, there's nothing.
Hmm. They're so
Nothing.
used to it. And speaking of the university level, what I also found super amazing in comparison to what I was used to in Czech, the community feeling and the fact that you can get involved as a student into the university environment. You can get a job in a university, and you
Mhm.
can get a job within your field. You can be a librarian, you can be a production maker, you can make sets for all the musicals, you can do, I don't know, any kind of like office admin work if they would need some help. You can be tutoring other students. Let's say you're good at math, you can help other students be better at math. And the fact that the university gives you resources to be part of the whole thing, I think that's something super powerful, that it gives you also great skills, and on the other hand helps you to be more accountable because it helps you paying for everything you need during the time. So that's also a very smart and cool idea that I feel like all the universities should learn from. Why not?
Absolutely. Well, after graduation in South Dakota, you decided that you didn't really want to return to Europe. What made you stay in the US, and what else did you want to accomplish?
So even during my time in South Dakota, it was not always there, because I realized once I was in South Dakota, even though it's South Dakota, quite middle of nowhere, I was able to meet lots of international students. And I realized, oh wow, I came to the world, to the States, and I met so many people from the other parts of the world, and that was something impressive. And I was really passionate about meeting all the people from Asia, from different continents, and I still have lots of friends thanks to it. And before I graduated, before my last semester, I found the opportunity to go study to China, where I completely changed my way of studying here in the States, of fulfilling my goal. I learned Chinese language, which was another crazy idea that I worked super hard for, but I'm also very grateful for. And that helped me realize that, oh wow, I don't need to be physically based in one location, because I have this amazing opportunity, and which I'm super grateful for, that I can take my instrument and perform with it in all the different places all around the world. So that inspired me that even though I don't need to be based physically in the Czech Republic or in America or in China, be it anywhere, I can still go to these places maybe more frequently. But I still felt being here in the environment was giving me many more opportunities, because they're such a big country where you can do so many things. And also the way of people's thinking, the way the things are being run here, it gave me much more flexibility than if I would be home. I experienced it many times when I returned to my home for longer period of time, 1 or 2 months after I was being here for a longer time. And after a while, I started feeling a little bit down. I feel like all the things that I worked on, I dreamed about, now were not heading in the right direction. And sometimes the attitude of the people wasn't as positive, as hopeful as I was used to from here. So I really miss the environment here. So I felt like, even though I will never forget I am Czech and I always want to be connected with my home culture, but I prefer to be professionally based here in America for now, because I believe it can give me more. But it's still temporary and still being developed as I progress, as I grow, and as I experience more things. So I don't know what it's going to be like in 5 years from now. But yeah, I decided to stay here. I took a
Now
gap
we see
year.
you. Now we see you in your New York apartment. Is that right?
Yeah, now we can see me in my East Harlem apartment in Manhattan, which is super amazing thing to say.
It is. I'm so proud of you.
Thank
It's
you.
amazing.
Thank
Well,
you.
you managed to get into Berklee School of Music in New York, where you graduated
Yes.
last year, and again, you needed funding.
Hmm.
Tell us your story, because I think that's also impressive. Like, you know, to see how people are actually willing to help a person who has a dream to become the cimbalom guy, and just
Hmm.
you know, go there and do that.
Hmm. So luckily in the Czech Republic, we have several foundations that can focus on different things. And some of them focus on supporting students that have dreams and ideas, or they are from unprivileged environments and families. And I always heard about it, like there are those big foundations of like super rich people that can help students to go and fulfill their dreams. And when I first was about to go to South Dakota, I immediately tried to contact these two big foundations that we have in our country. And I filled out the applications. I was hopeful that I can get in, but from both of them, I was immediately refused, because I didn't have this experience. I didn't have this prestigious name behind me of the school that I'm going for. My English was quite terrible available at the time, and I didn't have any information about how to do that. So I had options to either give up or to find any other solution. So I didn't want to give up, and I started looking up on internet what other foundations in the Czech Republic exist. And there are so many of these foundations that I was even surprised that many of them exist. I started watching documentaries on the Czech national television about Patreons, about some powerful Czech people who support anything, being it culture, being it education. And I tried my best to really sit behind the Google and try to get any connection with these people, try to get any contact information. And what I did, I remember it very vividly. I was sitting in my room, my childhood room in my village, and I picked up the phone and I said, like, hello, my name is Matěj Číp, and there is some amazing thing that happened to me. I was accepted to my dream university with the cimbalom, which is something that has never happened before. And unfortunately, I'm not able to pay for it, and my family cannot support it. So I would love to ask you if you think there would be any way that you could help me. And to my surprise, few of these foundations said yes. It wasn't as straightforward as it sounds like right now. Some of them said, oh, we're sorry, we're focusing on this specific region. But then 2 weeks later, I got a call back. Oh, Matěj, I was trying to think about you and I couldn't get you out of my mind. And we want to make an exception. We want to give you at least some part of what we can to really support your dream. And one of these foundation at the beginning, they even organized a crowdfunding campaign that was very small, but still that helped me to get the motion, the momentum going, that people start hearing about the fact that I can take something that is so traditional, so part of the Czech culture, and I can bring it to this big world of America, and I can try to find my new paths. So this foundation helped me at the beginning. Then I contacted all the different private sectors, companies, towns, governments of regions, of all the different things that you could think of. And some of them were able to give me the support. And piece by piece, I was able to get money at least for the first semester of my studies in South Dakota. And when I was there, I was like, okay, I'm going to do everything that I am able to survive for the next semester, to survive for the next year, to finish my studies. And the more I did it, the more momentum I gained, the more people I was able to reach out to. And eventually it became a little bit easier because I also got much more experience in it. And it all concluded in this nice and big moment for me, where I took all these experiences and I applied it for my Berklee College of Music experience. And I tried asking again one of this biggest foundation, Bacala Foundation in the Czech Republic, with the same offering, but now for this prestigious university, covered with all the successes and the experiences. And they were able to accept me and fully support me for my studies, and they paid for all my tuition, which has been something that I still cannot believe that it happened, and very grateful for that.
Well, you work really hard for that, and probably that's something what you need as a musician too, right? For practicing, like to keep the motivation going, like not lose it, right?
Absolutely. As you know, like playing a musical instrument is like brushing your teeth. You need to do it on a daily basis. If you don't do it, you start feeling weird, like there's something not
Can you
right.
give a phone call to my daughters, please, like every day to remind them?
Of course, there are some times that it's very hard, but in front of me there's a timer, this very like basic timer. And what I do in the days when I really feel like I don't want to practice, I put on 5 minutes, and I try to do it for 5 minutes. And if I'm feeling really bad even after those 5 minutes, then I feel like, okay, this is a day to take off and reflect. But in most cases, those 5 minutes will get me into it, and then I spend 2 hours, 3 hours, and I can spend more time behind
Love it. I love it. Okay, I'm buying timer for Christmas.
You can try and let me know if it worked out.
I'll blame you when they
Okay.
complain. Well, I can only imagine how the New York experience has been for you. It's a city with, crazy, crazy amount of inspiration at every corner, millions of nationalities, countless musical influences. It's quite different from the cimbalom's origins in the middle of Europe, which again, we said it's tied to folk music, nature, which I know that it was very, very important for you too. Like, you were describing like your walks around your village as a child. How does it all get together? That original Matěj from a small village and that environment and this crazy international loud city of New York.
I think it's still getting together because it's so impressive to be here. Like every day I go in the streets, I just stop for a bit. I look around. It's like I'm walking in the streets of New York City. Like, is this real thing? The Matěj that was growing up in a small village where we had goats, sometimes we had horses, we have lots of chickens, we have vegetables all everywhere. There was just fields, mountains, and nothing, and everyone knew each other. And then I go into the city where everything can be incognito. No one even knows about it because there's so many people at once. So it always makes me think about what's been happening. But I think the fact that I am from that part, I have this experience behind me, I'm not afraid to do anything in a way that I don't have lots of things to lose. I'm coming from this humble environment, and being here really gives me such a big sense of fulfillment, of gratefulness, that I'm enjoying everything that I can, and I'm trying to go do all in as well. Of course, sometimes it's a little bit tricky because New York is very fast and can be really tiring. But it's an incredible experience and lots
So
of
what do you do? Tell
surprises.
me exactly, because like I have the same thing. I love New York. Every time I go
Hmm.
there, I feel very refreshed. I
Hmm.
feel very refreshed by all the inspiration, all the culture going on, all those
Hmm.
nationalities, all different kind of food. But then after third day, I'm ready to jump on the plane and go back
Hmm.
to my village of New Orleans
Hmm.
because it is very much more quiet here. What do
Yeah.
you do? How do you refresh yourself in that way, like that, if you
So.
seek quiet?
Mhm. So luckily, right now in East Harlem, I'm in an apartment where I can have my little quiet place. Right now, I'm calling you from my little so-called office where I have my instrument behind me and where there's nothing, and it's super peaceful. So lots of time I spend here just behind the instrument practicing. So sometimes I have a lots of quiet even in this like crazy city. But of course, I try to find it very important to don't forget about my health. So I go for very often run. Almost every morning I go and get for a run, and that's something that keeps me sane. It always helps me to clean my mind and get my ideas clear. And no matter how the day is going, if there's something bad happening, I can always feel better because I know I did something for myself right early from the morning. So that's something that what kept me nice. And of course, people. Now it's a little bit tricky because last year when I was at Berkeley, I had lots of classmates and we were always together with people after school. We did music, we hung out, we had little parties, we explored all the different countries again because lots of international students. But this time we graduated and everyone got spread all around the city or sometimes even outside of the city, and everyone is so busy and no one has the time. And now it's so expensive to live in New York, so the time is also money, so it's very tricky to get together again and to spend a good quality time. So now I'm trying to find a balance of really trying to find a good people that I would love to spend more time with. I also try to find the balance of when I go to some events to see things, to get inspired, to meet people, because that's what the city has the best to offer for, right? Because you can always meet the most inspiring and the coolest people from all over the world coming to this
Everywhere,
place,
everywhere, wherever you
everywhere.
go.
And unfortunately, that's also the other side. When there's so many things to do that you feel so tired because you don't even want to know what you're missing out. There's always
Yes.
something amazing that you're missing out because you're not going there. So I'm trying to, once a week go out, do something that I would not do, something unexpected. Once a week I try to go see some event. Once a week I try to go meet some people. That's at least my approach. And then most of the time I'm behind my instrument, practicing, recording, trying to plan, think, connect, or work on the projects if there's some concerts coming up.
Speaking of your classmates, I just wanted to ask you
Hmm.
about your Chinese classmate,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I think that he quite changed your life,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well,
Yes.
there's
What happened? Did he open the door to the Chinese, music for you?
yes, he definitely opened the whole world to me, not only to Chinese music, but to China or Asia in general.
And sorry to interrupt you
Mhm.
again, but like, do they call it cimbalom, that instrument in China,
So
or
in China, they have also the what would we call the dulcimer,
okay?
Chinese symbol, let's say, and officially they call it yangqin. One thing that maybe we can come back to the cimbalom. So we were talking about the dulcimer, about the instrument that was preceding the concert cimbalom, and this instrument, the dulcimer, has origins 3,000 years before Christ in Persia. It's actually
Mhm.
one of the oldest instruments that has been ever known to our humanity. And this instrument from the Persia environment migrated all around the world. And it is so impressive about the cimbalom that each country adapted the cimbalom, the dulcimer, towards their culture, towards their style, towards their needs. So you go to Iran and you still have this original instrument that has been there for thousands of years, that hasn't changed, still uses the microtonality, the, let's say, very exotic scales and sounds. And then you go to the West and you see the instrument progressing towards more of the classical music influence, where you get all the way to cimbalom. In Germany, you have smaller dulcimers, but also adjusted towards German folk style of music, which is different from the Asian style of music. And in Asia, you have this very gentle, very fragile version of the cimbalom or dulcimer that you use the bamboo sticks for to play with. There's different layouts of the strings, and it sounds super ancient. And if you play the Chinese traditional music on it, it's the perfect fit. And an instrument has been there, part of traditional Chinese orchestras for a long time. And because of the huge amount of Chinese population and the huge tradition of Chinese history and development, it's an essential part of Chinese traditional music, which is so inspiring for me to see, because back home it's still, oh, this is just a cimbalom, some like folk, we can go drink wine and have fun. But in there, they take it seriously. They recognize it as an official instrument everywhere in China, and you can study it at all the different universities that you can think of, which has been super cool.
And which Matěj did. He attended a study program in Beijing, right?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
And you studied for 1 semester. And also last summer, you won a competition there, right?
Yes.
What was the competition?
So it was a competition, the Chinese branch of the dulcimer. They decided that they want to start a new association for the world dulcimer family that would bring all these different dulcimer cymbaloms from different parts of the world together, that would professionally have opportunities to meet, to organize concerts, competitions. And for the first opportunity of starting this foundation, they said, okay, let's have a competition. But it was a little bit tricky because they put all these instruments together to compete with each other, of course, split into age categories. I was able to win it, but I think it was more like a gesture of really set up this new momentum and set up this new collaboration so we can all keep being connected together and do more projects. But what was the highlight of this time when we went to China, which was in April of 2024, we also went there to fulfill a Guinness World Record of the biggest amount of dulcimer players at once performing the same piece. So there was 425 of us playing all of the different kinds of dulcimers, including cimbalom, the Chinese dulcimer yangqin, including the Iranian santur, Indian instrument, also German hagbret. And we were all playing this Chinese tune that was written just for these purposes. And we beat the Guinness World Record, and we got this title of the largest amount of dulcimer players at once performing.
Please don't ask me when Matěj is doing all of that, because he's only 28 years old. Am I right?
Just turned 28. You're right.
Just turned 28. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm so happy that you're sharing all of this with us today. We have a couple minutes left. I wanted to ask you, you said in one interview recently for the Czech radio that you finally made it in New York to basically live there and make money and, you know, maybe start a career of a musician / teacher over there. But I also, again, what I like and why I'm saying it, because I think it confirms like what I observed about you, is that you also mentioned that you are cooking for your classmates. Is that still going on?
It ended already, but yes, I did. During our Berkeley program, we had one classmate from China, and because I had now a big passion for Asian and Chinese culture, I can speak Chinese, and I love Chinese cuisine. When I have free time, when it's quite rare, but I watch YouTube videos of one Chinese chef, and I learned the techniques how he cooks. And we had one very rich classmate from China whose dad is selling real estate in China. And she was like, oh, Matěj, I like the food that you cook. Like, I always try to find good food in New York, but it's sometimes very hard and it takes so much time. And I was like, oh, great. What if I cook for you sometimes? And I said, yeah, let's try it. And so then I started cooking for her, and I cooked for her 4 times a week. Usually I prepared it in batch, so it was quite efficient. She bought me all the equipment for cooking state-of-the-art Chinese food, and I could develop my skills and finally have some time, some activity that was different from music and studying, and I could cook food. And that was one of the ways I could contribute to this huge financial load that New York bears.
Again, I absolutely love this approach. Okay. And it shows that you are not scared of anything, and that you are not some kind of like, intellectually only thinking like that the music is your only passion. And again, I'm not saying it in a bad way, but I hear it quite a lot from some people that, when you studied, let's say you studied law, why do you, why did you make a cupcake business, let's say, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I absolutely love when people actually go and follow their passion, and nobody said that we have only one job in our lives and only one way to go. So I'm happy that you share this with us. Also, you mentioned that you had your first cimbalom student. So how is that developing? Are we gonna
Mhm.
see more and more cymbaloms around the United States in the future thanks to you?
Ideally, that would be a great thing to do. It's also very time consuming, so I'm not sure how many students I'm able to accommodate. I still have only one right now, but he's been very talented. The biggest problem that I see right now is that there's not enough instruments, and he
Hmm.
himself also doesn't have his own instrument. So now his father actually would love to buy the cymbalum for him, but now I have plans for next 3 years that are not maybe going to be connected necessarily with New York. So I'm trying to also let him know I think it would be great if he's passionate. He loves that, obviously, but I'm not going to be here, and I'm not sure who else is going to be able to keep
Teach
pushing
him.
him forward. So
Hmm.
that's the biggest problem, and I would love to inspire more cymbalum students, cymbalum people, professionals from all the different parts. Doesn't have to be only Czech Republic to come here, because the opportunities that this environment can provide us with to our field, they are almost like they cannot be wasted, because this is such a huge place. So I wish that in the future, if I keep doing these small things, that I can get more students, we can all get more people here sharing the word with about the symbolon, and giving more opportunities to our field for the future. Because if you fall in love with that, it's absolutely worth it, because that's what makes you happy. And if you do that, you don't have to think about other things, and you feel fulfilled.
And one last question.
Hmm.
Since I'm in New Orleans, and New Orleans is the city of jazz,
Hmm.
can we play jazz on cymbalom? And do you do it?
Absolutely, we can. I don't do it as often as I would love to, but I have experience. Already started in South Dakota when I was part of a jazz ensemble. I was trying to learn how to play jazz because it's so different from what I was used to back home. But I always like to play, even right now. I played a private concert last week, and it was Christmas inspired because the Christmas season. So I played some jazz Christmas tunes on the cymbalom as well. So I do it. I don't do it all the time, but I love to do it because it's so fun to do.
Well, maybe we will see you here in New Orleans, and I would love that. I would love to see Matěj Číp on the traditional folk Moravian instrument cymbalom play some jazz here in New Orleans.
I would
Hopefully,
love
it's going to
love that
happen.
as well. I hope it can happen.
Matěj, thank you so much. Thank you. It was really great to have you. I always love speaking to people who are not scared and who are just willing to go there. And again, as you said, like ask questions, don't be scared, and just fulfill your dream. Thank you for being inspiration for all of us.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and I hope listeners enjoyed our talk. Have a great time.